Yo, 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 what's going on? It's the NRW, where nerds rule the world. It's your boy, Kuya P, aka Patrick Michael Strange, the Adobro, the Babinka Boy, the leader of the Holla Holla Homies, and the Cine Gang of the Nerds of Colors Show Pal Show. And today I got another great interview with you guys. I've enjoyed this pair's work for quite some time, especially with the. And it's weird how I kind of stumbled across it. You know, I've been going on line to just kind of see how the rest of my AAPI community is doing, especially with a lot of the Asian hate that was occurring within this past, year, or actually I would say the start of the Trump administration, because he's such a bastard. But anyway, y'all know my politics. I can't stand that guy. But anyway, it just got further inflamed, within this past year and with everything that was going on. And so I like to go on Twitter and be inspired by other Asians that are standing up and speaking out, and other thought leaders in the community. And I stumbled upon Rich Lee and Martin Lee and the other ones by the Lees, and just was loving it. I'm a Peanuts fan, and so them kind of intermixing that love there along with the AAPI message, and really overall the POC message, and just reflecting a lot of the feelings that I was feeling through that work, and just seeing the stories of how it came through. I kind of saw the opening thread, I want to say, on Twitter on how I think Rich kind of inspired Martin in a way to like really, be vocal. But we're going to get into that whole story in just a bit. But I just love this. I love that they're a pair of brothers and they're speaking their heart, speaking their soul, and just, being vocal. Because a lot of us, especially, within the Asian AAPI community, are silent in a way. And I don't like that. I think we need to speak out when we're being offended, you know what I'm saying? Instead of being, the quote unquote, they like to call us the model minority, you know what I'm saying? But fuck that shit. Excuse my language. But I think we need to be vocal, because then it just allows them to continue to railroad over us. But we're going to get into that. We're going to have some fun. I'm really honored to have them on. Let's bring them on. I'm going to bring them up on the screen. Rich and Martin Lee, Hand-Eye Studio. What's going on? Air horns. I'm not air horns right now. You guys don't hear it, but there's air horns blaring because we're so excited. Welcome. Thank you guys both so much for your time. I'm really honored to have you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Excellent. So I don't know where to start. You kind of heard my introduction. It's a little different than when I do an interview and, a lot of other comic creators and other artists. You guys, I stumbled through Twitter and was, again, I loved how you guys have just been, talking out and speaking, and the work that you guys are doing and collaborating together. I just think is so beautiful. Can you tell us, I guess, from how it all started in regards to starting this other ones, and just how kind of like this current path? Because I know you both have been kind of doing your thing for a while, especially you, Martin, with your art. It was crazy. We kind of went back and forth a little bit, when we became friends online, and you've been in the art game for a while. So I'm really curious to hear both your stories, but can we start with how the other ones blossomed during this past year and a half?
Yeah. Well, I think basically it started, I wanted to learn how to animate. And so I got an app and I started animating, and that was in December of 2020. And then I don't know. I one day was reading the Peanuts and I saw Peppermint Patty sleeping in the classroom. And I thought to myself, there has to be other children in that classroom. And like, if I were in that classroom, what would I be thinking if I saw Peppermint Patty sleeping, And my first thought was, I would never. Like, I could never get away with that, because my dad would be so mad at me. So it got me to thinking about, there are clearly other people of color in Peanuts world other than Franklin. And so I just started creating characters. And the first story I did was really just trying to tell the story about something that happened to us as children, and sent it to my brother. And, and then pretty much that's when that was back in February, March. And that's when Atlanta happened. And I found myself just coming home and just crying. I'd turn on the TV and I'd see the news and I would just be in tears. And so I started making some comics and talking to my brother, and who, we have not talked a whole lot overall in our adulthood. We live on opposite sides of the coast, and so, him being a professor and just talking to him and just wanting to get my feelings out, and just, Rich just helping me with all that and putting words to what I needed, what I was feeling. I had the images, I just didn't have the words. And then that's where he came in.
Yeah, so just to back up a little bit, so I'm a professor of psychology at the University of Minnesota, and my area of research has always been on Asian American psychology. But part of the challenge for me is my work doesn't leave academia. It just kind of stays in the academic journals and conferences I attend. And so I've been trying to figure out ways for years, how do I get my message out more broadly to the public? And you can only do so much by teaching undergrads and grad students. But as my brother Martin said, we've not communicated a ton. And we're one of those families, maybe there are other Asian American families this way, where we'll text, but we don't talk on the phone. And so he would just start texting me and I'd start responding like, you should do this, or what about trying it this way? And around that time, I was presenting at a conference and I shared one of the stories of my childhood and of upbringing at this conference of psychologists. And people were just really resonating with it. And I tweeted about it in a thread. And then that's what Martin sort of picked up on. And, I think the way that the world's been working lately, it just forced us to come together, in a way that we sort of avoided in many ways we're both in our 50s and, probably most of our adulthood, we avoided these conversations with each other, even if we were having them separately.
Man, and I can't thank you enough. And I just adore this. I love that. And Martin, you weren't alone when the Atlanta, we were all crying. And it's sad that it happened, but I'm so thankful that a lot of us came together to support each other. Like Rich, to you, and virtually through seeing others share posts, like with Rich, you sharing this to the world and inspiring Martin, just all of that just connected, and we didn't feel alone, and we're coming together as a community and we're inspiring each other. And I don't know, maybe you as a psychologist could probably have a better understanding on that psychologically with how that benefits the community if you share your thoughts and all that. But I'm so thankful that we as APIs are coming a lot more together than I've seen in other years, and it's very sad that it had to have an event like this to really force us to connect and look at the bigger picture more so than in other years. But I think there's a movement ahead, and we're just gonna resist. We're not gonna take this anymore because we have been in a way getting pushed over. And I love how now even further after that initial piece and story came out, and with Martin putting that together, and then how you, Martin, as well have. I kind of saw from that initial post that Rich put out, and then some of the artwork that you did. Then you started really putting a little bit more. And then you started up a Patreon, which I love. Support this guy. Support Martin. I'll have all of his links in the comments below when this interview is out, so you could support him, because it's so important with everything that's occurring and just putting this, visibility on us as POCs. Yeah.
Oh no, I was going to say, so much has been happening around, anti-Asian hate. But for me, living here in Minneapolis, the big event for us during the pandemic was the murder of George Floyd by police officers. And one of the most amazing things that I was able to witness here in Minneapolis was the communities of color, immigrant, US born, refugee, adoptees, all coming together in solidarity, right? And, this was in the midst of, Trump and all the anti-Asian hate, but really it was coming together to support the Black and Brown communities. And I think that just freed us up to begin to start to speak.
Yeah.
And knowing that as we're speaking, not just other Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are listening, but the entire communities of color are listening.
Heck yeah. Exactly.
When the comics started, they were just like personal stories from our childhood. And then with everything happening in the world, I just, I'm going to turn 54 on Wednesday. And what I realized is that I've been sleepwalking my entire adult life, my entire life.
Yeah.
And everything that's happened just kind of snapped me out of it. And slowly, like I have a lot of education to do, a lot of learning, and just recognizing that there's just so much hate and so much pain. And so, what started out as personal comics became like, I want to tell everyone's story. I mean, the entire BIPOC community has been so silenced over all the years, and the portrayals have been so negative that, like you were saying, we're speaking up now. And, so much so, like it's become my passion, tomorrow I'm getting on an airplane and I'm moving to Florida. I'm like, I quit my job and I'm starting a new life. Like, this is a different path for me now. And social justice and comics are the thing now for me. So
I love it. I love it. And I want to wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you.
And I want to wish you all the love on your journey to Florida and everything you're doing. And I'm just truly inspired by all the work you both are doing. And just, wow, it's just amazing. Yeah, I kind of went through the same thing when the pandemic started. Been doing this a long time, but then I kind of closed in. I think we all did with the pandemic, and just concentrate on the things that matter most to us, friends and family. But then after a while, feeling like I'm living in the apocalypse, I decided another friend of mine, he goes by the Asian King of Comedy, my friend Lloyd Lee. I don't know, he's not related to you guys. So another Lee was like, hey man, if you keep saying no, they're going to stop calling you, which is very true in the entertainment world. And so that's what kicked me off starting Show Pal Show, which I represent for my Filipinos, being a Filipino, and just to give back and just finding a new focus in life, for social justice and speaking out for our communities, because you just seeing everything that's happening, like you said, with the Floyd, and just, again, the Asian hate that was occurring, and just everything that happened last year, it was insane. So I just love this. And I love that you guys are working together and you guys are speaking your truths. And I love that we are, as a community, are becoming more vocal. Can you tell us how it all started? Can we go back a little bit, even more now, to your stories growing up, your immigrant stories? Because, I share a lot of these stories with the Show Pal Show because we're not a monolith. And we all found our own paths. And while we may be starting late, you guys are in your 50s to being now vocal with what we're seeing. Can you tell us kind of like that journey on how that came to be? Like, this is how it started as immigrants, and where you kind of saw things which make you into who you are and now being vocal, and what led you, Rich, to want to, get into psychology and Asian American studies with that. However you guys want to start. So can we start with your parents? How did that happen? And then you guys were born. Let's bring it back.
Yeah. So, we're both Korean American. We were born here in the US in Connecticut. And actually our parents' immigration story is something that I only recently learned the details about. That, and that's not uncommon in immigrant families, where you think but no one's ever talked about it.
There's a lot of things that we've never talked about.
And
that's
so my
Asian
dad
families right there.
Yeah. So my dad immigrated to Connecticut. Well, actually, he came on a tourist visa in 1964 to visit his sister, who had already immigrated here and married a Korean man. And then my dad, he didn't overstay his visa, but while he was on a tourist visa, he worked really hard to find a job to sponsor him. And back then, this is 1964, so this is before the 1965 Immigration Act that opened up quotas for Asian immigration. Before that, there were very few Koreans or Asians in general immigrating to this country. And what I later learned was that he essentially arrived and was able to get what Republicans today would call amnesty. But it's technically called being put on a registry that allows you an exemption to come into this country. So he was able to stay. And then he wrote a letter to get our oldest brother and my mom here in 65. And then Martin and I were born in the late 60s in Connecticut, in a small town, South Windsor, that is and was back then super white. you know,
Probably still is.
yeah, I mean, very few people of color at all. Um,
Yeah, so growing up in South Windsor, wanting to fit in, and I'm sure, your story is probably the same as ours, wanting to be like everyone else. We just want, I mean, that's every kid, every kid wants to fit in, but when you're a person of color living in white America, you really want to fit in, and there's no one to look to. The only people of color that I saw that were like me were on MASH, and watching MASH and like, well, they're not even Korean, because I know what they're saying and they're not even speaking Korean, So, wanting to assimilate as much as possible, like I said, I've been sleepwalking my entire life. And then, so just really doing everything that my friends were doing, and then looking at my parents and saying, why aren't they doing that? And then getting really upset because they were not like all my friends' parents. And as a kid, you just end up confused and wanting to show people that I'm like you, and so you just start doing things that show people that I'm like you, but you're never like them, because you can't change the color of your skin. So
like growing up with self-hate, like I feel like I put the label on for myself, like I had some self-hate there, and
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and you were talking about like how did this all come about, and like we said earlier, that there were things that we've never talked about. So it was just actually 2 days ago, I told him, I said, so when I was 18, I was having some hard times and I tried to kill myself. And through that, it led me down a path. Through that, it led Rich down a path. We never talked about what happened to me and the paths that we had to take. So he ends up being a psychologist. I end up moving to the West Coast and becoming a school teacher, but we never talked about why that happened. It just happened until 2 days ago. So kind of crazy. I mean, and, for me, that moment, I thought it was to become a teacher, but it really was social justice, was to right wrongs. Being in a hospital and seeing young children who had been abused their entire lives, so many wrongs in the world, and it just drove me to like, things need to be better. Our world needs to be better. And now that's the focus of the comics, is like trying to make the world better. And because they are comics, you can take delicate subjects and make them, not so heavy. And then people read them and then they want to learn a little bit more maybe, and do a little Google search on something. And
oh yeah. No, I feel that. And I'm happy to hear that both of you guys have kind of, wow, that's amazing. And so deep that you've both had a shared experience that you really didn't discuss. And I love that you now have had that moment to kind of close that door a little bit and just then kind of build together to move forward. That's a blessing. I'm sure you both feel that now, and that's amazing. And ooh, yeah, it's heavy stuff. Yeah, it's heavy, but yeah, and it's like you realize these things that you never know when it's going to happen, and it's just now building upon that, and then you kind of go about. I've had so many people in interviews that we talk on this. It's a lot of my interviews become therapy in a way, especially as of late, and especially because a lot of them has been my API community, and with the Show Pal show, like because of just everything that we're experiencing now, and it's new thoughts, and I you love it and hate it at the same time. You hate that we all had to go through that, but you love that we're now becoming stronger and finding a renewed focus, and we're building upon that. And now, like, I guess one of the questions I have as well is, so now that you're kind of awakened in a way, and I hate to use the term woke is becoming such a term now, but it's kind of true in a sense, but like, what are you doing? Well, I can already say, yeah, you're doing it through your art, through the other ones, you're speaking through that, but like for yourself, what are you doing for yourself individually to foster this new awareness and to outstretch into the community in other ways, like becoming more vocal with family now? Like you saw how like keeping this closed in for so long was kind of detrimental in a way. Are you now both freely freely sharing now amongst between each other, and then with extended members of the family, so that way we can prevent or stop if there's something that is occurring like that right now, and finding healing. And it can be difficult, but we have to heal now, so we can stop. And like, I've had a suicidal experience, and that's, to me, is also what kind of drove me to a lot of things. And I know I put strength in that now, and I speak on that at schools now, that sometimes you have to hit a low point to then find who you really are, your worth, and build upon that, to never find that place again. Or at least that's what I've been doing for myself. I'm gonna stop rambling and let you guys talk. But like, so what are you guys doing with this kind of renewed knowledge of self?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think one of the things that's really become more revealed is that we've all had personal traumas and also intergenerational traumas, right? That have been silenced over the years. And there's a lot of shame or guilt and just discomfort. And something that we're working through now is having more open communication about those traumas. And rather than let it limit us, like you're saying, right? Use that as a foundation for us to continue to build and grow. And so, for me, I have two little boys. Well, they're not little, they're 10 and 12. But one of the things that my wife and I have really made an intentional effort is talking with them about racism and our ethnic heritage, and making it just a part of our everyday life and everyday conversation, so that they're never going to get to a place where we were, where they were embarrassed or ashamed or not wanting to talk about things and just wanting to fit in. Like, they're super comfortable having these conversations with us, and we'll call things out, and they'll say, that's sexist to a classmate, or you're being racist. Or, one of the characters that we were just developing recently is based on my boys sort of using Chad as like the ubiquitous white person, right? Chad does this, Chad does that. And, it's such a different world that they are able to have that conversation with their parents and uncle that we never could have. And so for me,
well, even my son's 27, and, the difference between his generation and Rich's kids' generation is like night and day, really. I mean, last year I had no hope. I thought the world was going to shit, and then started making these comics, and then seeing young people following the comics, right? And then listening to young people speak and seeing people out on the streets, like, renewed my faith in humanity. The story I've been telling is, I've been listening to Obama's podcast with Bruce Springsteen, and in it he says, Bruce, those kids out there on the street, they're out there saying, you taught us all this. You taught us to care. You taught us to be compassionate. You may not believe it anymore, but we still do, and that hit me like, oh my God, as a school teacher, I taught children for almost 25 years. That's what I taught them. Be compassionate, be comparing, do the right thing. I forgot that. I gave up. They didn't give up. They're still out there fighting. And so now I have this renewed sense of purpose, and like you said, now we all have voices, we're not willing to be silent anymore. And we're joining together. The fact that you and I met over Instagram or Twitter or what, like, that's kind of weird, for me, at least. And finding these connections, like, oh, you're a nerd of color. That's my friend's brother, the whole thing. You used to live in Washington, and so it's a small world. So.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I love it. And I'm so inspired. I love this energy. I love this, and that's, what we've kind of found now with everything. It's sad that it happened this way, but we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're going to inspire and change the world moving forward. I have to ask you, so one of the questions I had, and I don't know if it was my wife or another friend that I introduced to the other ones, because I'm a big Peanuts family. My wife is huge into the Peanuts. How has that been doing the other ones? I'm curious if the Schultz people had reached out or seen any of the work you're doing.
I have no idea.
Been kind of charting that path with other ones and the Peanuts?
Well, I don't know if the Schultz family has seen it. I view the whole thing as a parody, because there were no people of color other than Franklin, and this is just the other side. So I draw in the style of Charles Schulz, but they're my drawings. They're based on his style and his tropes. So like when you see Charlie Brown at the brick wall, even if there's no speech bubble, you kind of have a feeling of what Charlie Brown is thinking. But if it's an African American character, most people don't know what he's thinking. It's a same form, same trope, different thought, right? Yeah. I don't know if you saw the one where I did the Scooby-Doo characters running, and they were people of color. Instead of being white, they were people of color. Mm-hmm. When people of color are running, it's a different reason. They're not chasing after monsters, looking for the bad guy. So it just kind of spinning that on its head. And because Peanuts is everywhere. I mean, he wrote that strip for 50 years every day. Mm-hmm. And it's been running 21 years since his death. So it's in everything. And it is so ingrained in American culture that it's the perfect thing to parody. So I don't know, maybe the Schulz family will contact me. We'll see.
Yeah. And I hope they get they give you their blessing, because I absolutely love it. And I had to ask that question because everybody is like, hold on.
Oh, yeah.
When I tell them about it, and I'm like, dude, it's what we've always, as POCs, have been thinking. Like, I love that you kind of presented material that we as POCs have always thought. And actually, I have a funny question, because it's one that I always bring up when talking about POCs within the Peanuts universe, is the Thanksgiving special when we had Franklin on one side of the table and then all the others on the other side. Like, I'm waiting for you to like give us his thoughts on that, and hopefully in the future cartoon. Or have you done that one yet or no? But
I have not, and I actually did some research on it, and technically that was the producers of the TV show. Because it was, so Charles Schulz wrote it, but he didn't say like, put Franklin over here.
Yeah.
So that was the animators, which kind of makes me think, well, that was back in the 70s. It wouldn't surprise me if animators did that, whether they did it consciously or not. The fact that it was done, and it's kind of clear as day that, oh, geez, there's Franklin all by himself. And I think Franklin is even sitting in the most uncomfortable chair around the table, like little things like that. And I think even Marcy is separated, she's at the bottom of the table, I think. So yeah, I think, those ingrained prejudices that people have, because, you hear it all the time. It's like, well, I'm not racist because, I know a black guy. I'm not racist because it's like, but why would you say that? Like, I had someone say to me like, well, I can say that to you because you're my friend. And I made a comment about it. It's like, well, if you're my friend, why would you say it? Like, clearly, it's racist. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you wouldn't say you're my friend. So I can say that. So I think, and, it's not the first time I've heard it. So I've kind of like accepted that over my entire life. And really, just because of all the Asian hate crimes that have been happening, it woke me up. And like all these pains are coming back from my past, things that I've buried deep down inside, and they're just flooding back, and they come out in the comics. So sometimes the comics are really angry, where I'm just swearing in the comics because I just have all this emotion, and then I have to, text Rich and say, is this okay? Am I going over the edge here?
I've joked that he's the id and I'm the ego. So, because I think there is that angle where, I'm looking at this as a psychologist, as a researcher, I'm immersed in ethnic studies, scholarship. And so I'm trying to bring some of that language and perspective to what his personal experiences and feelings are on a subject.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it work so far, is that we're balancing each other, because I can't visually communicate what he can do so well because it's so in him. But I can put the language and the concepts in there, and provide that source material to back up, because I think sometimes we'll think, maybe I'm the one, maybe I only experience this or feel this, but I can show the literature that's like, no, actually, you're onto something. And there's a word for that,
Awesome.
right?
So that's sort of been like the process thus far, is like you'll kind of have like this need to express a feeling for you, Martin, and then you kind of like lay it out and then confer with Rich and into the final product.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll find something in the news or something I've been reading about, and I'll send it to him, but it's like a primary source. And then he'll say, I can't understand this. You've got to break it down into 10 words.
I can't read the academic articles. It's too much for me.
So I'll have to like break it down. But part of, I think, what we both were doing separately was that we were kind of engaged in narrative nonfiction. I had already been writing about my childhood stories, just like he was sort of documenting in art. But I was writing it in long form. And I don't have the luxury of time to do that with the job as a professor. And so actually having Martin as a collaborator is a way for me to get it out in short comic form, which actually, whenever I now present at a conference of academics or out in the community when I'm doing consulting work, I always end with some of these comics. And the only thing hundreds of people viewing or attending these conferences will remember are the comics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, that just totally captured everything you were saying.
Yeah.
And I think that really says something, in terms of the medium of comics, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, everyone loves comics. I mean, we all grew up on it, right?
Yeah.
And well, that just to kind of go back to your Peanuts thing was, the Peanuts comics are not funny.
No.
Like, I mean, maybe a little bit, but they're more insightful, I guess. And they were his experiences being bullied, Charles Schulz, as a child. So he brought those all out in the comics. And so what I saw in the Peanuts was that there are these white characters, but they are the other ones in the white community. And now I want to show the other ones in the BIPOC community. So being able to get those feelings out are now, I think when people who study the other ones comics will see that, oh, that's a Martin comic and that's a Rich comic. Like you can kind of see the difference of like, this is the one that Rich had a heavy influence in, and this is one where Martin just flew solo and didn't even bother texting his brother.
I mean, sometimes I'm like, I don't even understand what this comic is when it's one that he just does on his own.
Oh, man. Yeah. Oh, I love it. And I want to see this autobiography too, kind of, Rich, that you kind of, been going back and forth. And then Martin Illustrated, again, like I saw the initial story when it all kind of started. I don't know how I came across it, but I'm so thankful for the universe and Twitter allowing me to see it from the beginning, and then seeing Martin grow from there with the furthering of the other ones. And
well, you helped in that. The fact that you were reposting them.
Oh,
I mean, it was like, oh my God, there's someone who's reposting it. Like I was just doing it for my own therapy. And the fact that you reposted it kind of gave me energy and, pushed me along.
I think there is a challenge we're having, which is really, do we do these single panel comics or do we do the multi-panel Sunday comic style where you can tell a longer story?
Yeah.
And it's
that was
really
one of my questions. What are you guys trying to do and planning for the future? Yeah, with it.
Everything.
So I think that's one of the things I keep saying. We need to do more of these longer panel, multi-paneled stories, because I think it tells a better story and you can really develop more empathy around the issues. And we also know that that's what we've heard from high school teachers and college professors who are using the comics already in their classes. So I think there is a real educational value that we could sort of move toward into the future.
Right. But because the comics right now are all online, there is no book or anything.
Yeah.
We live in a society where everything needs to be quick, so like, that's what I'm struggling with. Like, the 9-panel requires you to swipe, or it's really small, in 9 panels in one square. The single panel, it's like, bam, people see it right away and then they're done and they scroll to the next thing. So it's like balancing that of like, wanting to get the message out, wanting them to be engaged, but how do you engage people who don't like to go through,
Yeah. Well, and also it's how we also want to be able to make commentary about things that are happening in the news today, Like I just saw a tweet about Stephen A. Smith from ESPN critiquing Shohei Ohtani because he needs an interpreter and saying that's not part of America. You have to speak English.
Yeah.
Now that just happened today. So now,
Right.
or I read about it today.
Right.
So now I'm like, oh, we got to do a comic about that, you know?
Yeah.
But that would be like a single panel one because it's commenting on something that's happening right now versus telling a longer story.
No
Right.
worries. I completely understand. And I see, Martin, your dilemma, and both of you guys. I want what you're saying, Rich, and with Martin, I know the timeliness, well, that you're both saying as well, but then also just kind of seeing that happen. I would say collecting in a way, doing what you're doing, and then after a while, collect that into a collected format.
Mhm.
Because I know myself would want to buy it, and I know others that would want to buy it.
Right.
And maybe add bonus content while you're doing the dailies, maybe having some sidebar content that will be specifically for that collected edition, but doing what you're doing as a process,
Mhm.
making it timely, and then collecting it all in one, and then maybe adding that bonus content.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just a suggestion. What I want as a
It's-
fan,
Yeah.
I'm ready to
Feedback
give you
is
my
welcome.
money.
Yeah.
Feedback is welcome.
Well, and we also want to get stories from other people too. We want to collect stories because there are people who can't express what they're experiencing,
Totally.
right? But maybe we can help put it into a brief story that captures something important.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause everyone has been hurt. Everyone
Yes.
has been hurt,
Yeah.
But originally it was only going to be a Sunday comic. I was going to just do it once a week. But there was just so much shit happening in the world.
Yeah.
It just turned into like, okay, and then I'll do twice a week. Okay, now 3 times. And then it was like, then I had so many comics already built up.
Yeah.
It became a daily, and then I don't know if you noticed, but sometimes I post like 3 or 4 a day. And Rich is just like, dude, slow down. And I'm like, but all these news stories are happening right now. Like he's talking about the Stephen A. Smith thing, right? It's like, I want to jump on it while it's hot, but it's a challenge.
Oh no. And you can't let it overwhelm you. It has to be something else so that it's therapeutic, but also that you don't want it to become a job. You want, I think we all know with our passions, you don't want our passions to make it something you hate. But no, I love it. And I'm going to support you guys 24/7. I love what you both are doing. And I'm so inspired. And again, it's therapeutic as a community, man. And I just love it in every way. I'm just heaping praise at you right now. So we've discussed then what you're doing, going to go forward with it. Are there anything else that you're thinking outside of that or anything else that you want to say and talk on or promote as well?
I don't know. I think I've just been appreciating the support we've been getting and getting feedback from people. And, like you said, I'd love to make a collection. I'd love for it to be in schools. I'd love for, teachers to use this as a jumping off point to go into conversations with their students. I'd love to see students make their own comics, have their voices heard like this. I think, this generation coming up things are going to be different, and I'm excited to be a part of it and kind of get back into my teaching roots, but in a comic form way, like not actually in the classroom anymore, but
I think that's, for me, it's how can we use the comic as a way to have the talk and make that talk about race something that you can comfortably have every day, whether you're in a classroom or whether you're at the dining table or you're walking down the street with a friend, or you are confronted by a stranger who says something or does something racist. Like, comics is a great way to learn so that you can have a response in that moment, or what to do. Because I think, like what Martin's saying, this is really for our generation, but it's really for the next generation.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm looking at your back wall. I'm thinking, look at that. Those are for, things we carry with us into adulthood, but we learned it as a child.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Completely agree. Yeah. For me, Comics Room Gateway, being a mixed kid, growing up as a Navy brat, growing up around the world, not, kind of like we were all sharing our early stories. My dad's white, my mom's Filipina, but not being Asian enough for the Asian kids, not being white enough for the white kids,
Mhm.
being an outsider. And so
Mhm.
my connection to anything was Spider-Man. He was the outsider, always bullied, the X-Men, and that kind of formed at least a world I can escape to when I was being bullied and not being in either community to find a home. And that then furthered my creativity where I'm at now, and where I'm finding I can talk through comics and films and podcasts like this.
Right.
And,
Like,
it's all for that next generation, man.
Yeah.
Well, like Spider-Man, we now find ourselves in positions of power, and with power comes great responsibility, right?
Yes, indeed. As parents, like we're raising the next generation. Both of you guys, Martin, you had with your 20 you've got the eldest of us all, but my kids the same age as Rich's kids. So, we've got to, get them on the right path and give them ways that they can express themselves. And so I'm so thankful for the work that you guys are doing that I can share with my child and have them speak. And I love it. You guys are so amazing, man. Thank you both. Let me bring you guys, bring it a gallery view. If you could share for people that are listening to this audio wise, when I put it on the audio podcast versions, I'm going to have the links in the description below, but if you can share your socials or whatever links you want to provide for everybody that's listening, that wants to follow you guys and check you guys out.
On Instagram, it's at The Other Ones by Lee. On Twitter, it is Other Ones by Lee.
What?
Facebook? There's a Facebook page. I think that's The Other Ones by Lee. And then there's a blog site, theotheronsbylee.wordpress.com.
Awesome.
My Twitter handle is Rich Lee PhD.
Awesome. I love it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to hopefully talk to you again when the next time we're talking to you is, hey, we got a collection edition we're dropping. We got an animated series going. Schultz hit us up. Let's connect. Let's collab. I love it. You guys are so amazing. I can't thank you enough for your time and what you're doing for us and the world and the community as a whole. It's an immense pleasure to see it happen from the start to now. I love it and so honored to talk to you guys. Thank you guys so much.
Hey, thank you.
Definitely. For me, Kuya P, you can follow me at Strange Since 1977, as well as at Temple Far East, here at the NRW and at New Release Wednesday, where nerds rule the world. And of course, over at the Nerds of Color, where we give you pop culture from the POC perspective. We're out of here. The Other Ones by Lee, Rich, and Martin. Kuya P, we are out of here.
Hi, I'm Martin.
I'm Rich.
And we are The Other Ones by Lee. Come check us out on the NRW. Hi, I'm Martin.
And I'm Rich, aka Dr. Diggy.
And we are The Other Ones by Lee, a comic strip dealing with BIPOC issues and otherness. And we would love to hear your story. So if you have a story to share, please send it to us at The Other Ones by Lee on Instagram. And come check us out. Coming up soon on the NRW. So what is a nerd of color? Honestly, I'm not really quite sure, but I'm pretty happy to be one. And I think what it means to me is, for me right now, it means that I'm done taking shit from the world.
Hey, it's Rich Lee, aka Dr. Diggy. And being a nerd of color for me means playing Dungeons and Dragons, reading comics, and getting into punk rock music as a kid. And that led me down this path to now being a professor and co-creator of The Other Ones by Lee.